workers all over the country. You guys probably didn't know that about Dr. Alvarado. I'm proud to be the first Latina Executive Vice President of the United Food and Commercial Workers Union. We represent 1.3 million workers in the US and Canada. Sisters and brothers, how many of you like bacon? Raise your hand. The world is better with bacon, isn't it? So sisters and brothers, my members turn that hog into bacon. That is how we get bacon in our stores, and I am so proud of the work that our members do. So I was asked to speak a little bit about what the impact of a union is in our communities, and I want to start by talking about the work we're doing on the immigration front. Sisters and brothers, there are 9 million people in the US that could become citizens today. 6 million of them are Mexicans. I want you to do some math. I want you to think about this. 9 million people we can help become US citizens today. So the UFCW has a program across the country to help our members, to help working communities become US citizens, free of charge. So this is the first assignment you have. Wherever you can, go see a UFCW local union in your community, volunteer with us, and help us make workers US citizens. Because if we make them citizens, guess what happens after that? They vote. We increase our political power in the US if we help our members and workers become US citizens. 9 million. President Obama's executive action, what did Senator Durbin say? Who was asleep, who was awake? How many? 5 million more. 5 million more workers across the country, parents. 5 million parents of US citizen children or legal permanent resident children can get protection from deportation and can be able to legally work in this country. 5 million. But you know what it's gonna take? It's gonna take me and you leaning into this, helping our community get their documents in order, helping those workers apply for deferred action for parent arrivals. It's kind of the reverse of DACA, the deferred action for children. This is a deferred action for parents. Our community will not be able to benefit unless you lean into this and help us, help our members. Sisters and brothers, we have local unions across the country that are ready, that are preparing to make sure that meat packing workers are in the front of the line and get the protection of deportation and the protection and the ability to work legally in this country. That is what our union is doing. That is what the impact of a union work does in our communities. But I'd like to follow up a little bit in terms of what Cindy was talking earlier. There are 300 million people in the US. 1/3 survive on minimum wage pay. 1/3. 47 million are officially poor. Listen to this one. 50% of children in America's public schools are in poverty. Unions work to reduce poverty in this country. Because how many of you think it's so easy for one person to go and tell their supervisor, I want a raise? I want paid sick time. Who thinks that's easy, to go by yourself? But can you imagine when you go to your employer with all of us in this room and say to an employer, we need a raise. We need paid sick time. We need for pregnant women to be able to work in safer places. That is what a union contract does. That is how a union impacts your tios, your parents, your brothers and your sisters, because let's face it, sisters and brothers, We are the Latino community, and we are workers. So let me say this, statistics alone don't tell the story of poverty. Conservatives like to say that it is a personal failing, that we have to take personal responsibility, they say. And liberals like to call for more education and training, blaming the gap between the rich and the poor on a lack of skills. See, Mitt Romney had it right when he talked about the makers and the takers, except he had the villains and the heroes wrong. Let me put it to you like this. Robert Lovato works at a Potbelly's in Washington, D.C., and he makes $8 an hour. The CEO of Potbelly's, Alwyn Lewis, makes $1,000 an hour. Don't you think that maybe Mr. Lewis should make $750 an hour and give $250 to all the workers in his $1,000 an hour compared to $8 an hour. That is what we're talking about when we're talking about the gap, the wealth inequality in this country. That is what we're talking about, sisters and brothers. There's something wrong with that picture. So we need to change the game. We need to value workers. We need to make sure that workers are protected. Let me say this, Latino workers die on the job more than any other group of workers. Latino workers get injured on the job more than other workers. This is your work. Whatever it is that you're studying, psychology or business or whatever it is that we're doing, we have to object to the notion that a company cannot be profitable if it pays its workers living wages. It's not true. You can have a profitable company and workers can be treated with dignity and make a good living wage. Do you agree? Do you agree? That this is in conflict or in contradiction. There are great companies, and we saw one here today, that are 85% union, like Southwest Airlines. Treating their workers with dignity and respect. And it's a profitable company that we should all support because of that. I fly Southwest Airlines everywhere I go. You're welcome. Sisters and brothers, let me end by saying this. Unless you're a mother who has to send your daughter to school hungry, you don't know how it feels. The unemployment rate for African Americans is double that of whites. But unless you sent out 100 resumes and not one interview, you don't know how it feels. Over 2 million immigrants have been deported under the Obama administration. But unless you're an undocumented worker or a child of an undocumented worker, fearing that your parents can be deported at any moment, any day, you don't know how it feels. So sisters and brothers, this is where we're at. This is the point. We can give you statistics, but how many of you are going to find that union and say, we can volunteer to help Latino workers become citizens? We're going to volunteer to help Latino workers get protection from deferred action for parents. I'll find a place anywhere in this country where we need you. And you can come up and talk to me later, because you're the ones that are going to make it happen. Because we both work together. Because you lean in a little bit, sister, and I lean in a little bit, we can push harder. We can push farther. See, this one thing about where you're at. You can go fast. You can go far if you want to go alone. But I promise you, that if you invest in our community, if you invest in workers, sisters and brothers, as a community, we'll go even further. That's the commitment that I'm asking of you today, and I promise you that the UFCW will be right there with you. Thank you very much.
And I learned to advocate for myself. And I go to the state legislature and I realize there's only 4 other Latinas. And you know what? It doesn't matter what I do on my own. I can do a lot on my own, but if I don't have some other people around me looking out for the same interests, trying to push the same agenda, it's one voice. And even 5 voices aren't enough, but 5 out of 80 in my assembly are better than 1 out of 80. And I know the collective power that we share together will always be more. And we need more than 5, we need more than 6. But we know that if it's 1 person versus 79, you have, and it doesn't matter how qualified you are. It doesn't matter. I mean, I sat and looked through all the legislators in California. I have more degrees than any of them, right? I sat and looked at their experience. You can have more experience than all of them. It doesn't matter, because old white men stick together, you know? And we need to as well, and not in necessarily a conflictual way, but in a supportive way, so that we can stand up with that. It doesn't matter what industry you're in business and labor and politics, it's necessary.
Sister, I have a reason why. Because you know what? It's easy to stand together when it's easy and when things are good. But when your supervisor's yelling at you at the line, who stands up and says, you're not going to treat that woman like that? When your supervisor takes you into the refrigeration and tries to sexually harass you, who stands up? So I know why I say we gotta stand together. Because when times are good, when everybody's loving each other at a conference, it's easy. But on that floor, in that job, when that supervisor is up your... Who's gonna stand up? That's when it counts, and that's when it matters.
Is this on? Am I on? Okay, I can yell good. You know, when I said that, what I meant was exactly what my sister said. We are the we were, you guys are the you are, and we have been through the struggles. We have been in places where they sexually harass you in a job place, where they yell at you, where they try to make you look like you're nothing, or treat you like a non-professional that you are. And it's really a big thing for women in the workplace more than the men, but it happens to them too. There is strength in numbers, and that's why union is so good and so powerful. So don't let them tell you, listen, my people they start. My people, the wages they start with is $10,000 for a year. $10,000. That's what they make as a living. And we are some of the higher paid. Now we moved it to 12 in the last 5 years. That's why you stand together. You can make little things that are, or bad things, little things, big things can happen. Strength in numbers. You know the old story about one stick, you can break it in half, you put a pile and nobody can move it. And that's power, it's empowerment, and we've got to stick together. Fight for what you believe in.
Was born in Pasadena, California in 1947.
My father was very insistent that I become an American citizen, and we lived in Mexico. We proudly lived there. My father and mother worked there, but he wanted me to be born in America. So we went exclusively to Pasadena, California. The same with my sister Vesta. My mother was Mexican. She was the secretary of my father, who was the branch manager of a bank in Mexico City, an American bank. And they fell in love. My mother was a lot younger. She was Mexican, and she never, till she died at 97, changed her citizenship and always lived in Mexico. So we were always brought up in two cultures, Mexico and the United States, between two worlds, bilingual, bicultural. I I started playing baseball at 10, and I played in this very poor neighborhood. I was a shy kid. I was learning English and Spanish. I didn't know my true identity. Was I an American? Was I a Mexican? I spoke both languages. Baseball paved the way for a shy kid to be accepted.
At the age of 13, Bill is sent to boarding school in Massachusetts, and at first finds difficulty fitting in.
Well, I vividly remember a winter cold day, and there was a batting cage, and the varsity baseball coach said, get that Mexican kid to see if he can hit. And I went up there, and I did pretty well against that machine. And I happened to make the varsity team as an 8th grader.
After boarding school, Bill's dream was of playing professional baseball.
I was a pretty good pitcher, and I wanted to sign with a major league team, and there was interest on the part of several teams. However, my father said, no, you're going to go to college, and that's an order. And that's the last time my father gave me an order, because he died shortly thereafter.
Fulfilling his father's wish, he enrolls at Tufts University.
I became president of my fraternity. I said, we're not going to be the beer-drinking fraternity. We're going to be a fraternity that does some good philanthropic work, some tutoring of inner-city kids, some philanthropic work. And that geared me towards, I think, doing the right thing, geared me into politics.
Bill Richardson receives a BA from Tufts University in 1970 and a master's degree from Tufts Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy in 1971. Armed with his diplomas and a newfound interest in politics, he goes to work on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C. And by the end of the 70s, he was back in New Mexico with his own political ambitions. In 1982, after a close primary, Bill Richardson is elected to Congress and serves for 16 years.
I was elected to Congress at a very young age, and I didn't exactly go up through city council's lower offices. I went straight to Congress. Being able to work to bring some civil rights to Latinos, finding, protecting environmental lands and water in northern New Mexico, fighting for the land grants, fighting for protecting national parks and wilderness areas and wildlife. That was a great highlight.
In 1997, President Clinton names Richardson U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations, and in 1998, he is appointed U.S. Secretary of Energy. In 2002, Bill Richardson returns home and runs for the office of Governor of New Mexico. He wins and serves for 8 years.
I think we really made a difference. We improved Latino education. We found ways to bring a movie industry to the state. We did a lot of renewable energy, solar, wind projects in the state. We brought a light rail, a train between Albuquerque and Santa Fe, a spaceport with Virgin Galactic, Richard Branson. We created a lot of jobs and a lot of opportunities, and especially in the Latino northern New Mexico. We created some jobs and improved some of the schools and infrastructure there. So I feel that my Latino constituents are responsible for my success.
Throughout his political career, Bill Richardson was sought out by both Republican and Democratic administrations to negotiate tense situations around the world, including the release of American hostages.
Bill Richardson, my friend and my mentor. Very few people know that he's been nominated 5 times for the Nobel Peace Prize because of his efforts in international diplomacy. Bill Richardson has met with some of the most dangerous people in the world so that others can speak freely. And for that, I know we are all eternally grateful.
In 2007, Bill Richardson announces his candidacy for President of the United States, but after the New Hampshire primaries, decides to withdraw. Bill had married his high school sweetheart, Barbara, in 1972.
Well, my wife and I, we've been together over 40 years. It's been a long-term romance. And she's accompanied me on so many of my political journeys. In New Mexico as First Lady, she was great when it came to issues like domestic violence, immunization. She did it all in a very quiet way, and was one of the best First Ladies New Mexico's ever had.
Among other duties, Bill Richardson devotes his time on 2 foundations that he created.
Well, a lot of people ask me, what are you doing now? You're out of politics. Well, I'm not really out of politics. I try to be helpful to the president in foreign policy and domestic policy. I do quite a bit of television. I do some teaching. I do some consulting for renewable energy companies. I serve on boards. But I've got 2 foundations that I have out of Santa Fe that are very dear to me.
Bill Richardson created 2 foundations. The Foundation to Preserve New Mexico Wildlife with actor and conservationist Robert Redford, and the Richardson Center for Global Engagement, focusing on conflict resolution diplomacy.
We have some projects where we go in and try to rescue political prisoners, hostages, as we did this Marine in Mexico, as we have journalists in the Middle East, as we have American servicemen in North Korea. So this foundation, the international one, is very important.
I had the honor to intern for then Congressman Bill Richardson back in the early 1990s. As you can see by the photo, we both look a little bit younger then. But nonetheless, Governor Richardson opened up opportunities for a young Latino from a small farming community in Nambe to be able to get involved with the President of the United States, to know what it was to stand up for constituents that didn't otherwise have a voice. And his service didn't stop there. He traveled the world and made sure to stand up for people that were imprisoned, that were taken away from their families. So Bill, congratulations, and it's an honor to be here, to be able to call you my friend, and to know where I can go to always get good chicharrones. Felicidades and congratulations.
What everybody knows about Bill Richardson is that he's had an incredibly distinguished career. But everybody might not know that as he's fulfilled all these historic, trailblazing positions along the way, he's always made a point to help others and to bring young people up along with him and to open the doors of opportunity for so many. Without Bill Richardson, there would be a league of young Latinos who would not have had the opportunities to serve this country and to be involved in public service. Thank you, Bill, for helping me and so many others.
Of all his many traits, the one that I think distinguishes Bill more than others is that he's always operated from a vision of the Latino community and its future. It's a vision of respect for our people, a celebration of dignity, of pride and heritage that goes where Bill goes because it's part of him, and it's touched other people by his example. And when the history of Latino progress in the United States is written, the name Bill Richardson is going to be prominently there. It has been the driving cause of his life. It has touched many lives, and it has made us proud.
What we don't want is to have everyone say, well, the Latinos, great growth, potential power. There's never a greater burden than a great potential. You have to actually do it and get in there and fight and participate and be in the arena and then win. Maybe you lose a few, but we want all of you to finish the job about our community. Elect the first Latino president. That's doable. I was one of the first to run. I didn't get very far, but one of you in the audience there is going to be a U.S. senator, a governor, a man or a woman there that is going to make a difference. You can do it. I was able to do it. Determination, honesty, integrity. But fight hard. Don't give up. No se dejen. Sí se puede.
staff of the United States Leadership Institute and the 33rd Annual United States Hispanic Leadership Conference. We salute you.
Please stay standing up. You know, after that wonderful tribute, gracias, Juan. You know, I've been coming to these events, this annual dinner, for many years. I haven't been here. And I remember with Ambassador Lomeni, she was going to be the first Latina to be ambassador to the Organization of American States. And I saw
the people who have served us, and I know we've done that. We prayed for them, and we've acknowledged them. But every one of you, the vast majority of you, come from humble experiences. Whenever somebody serves me, I like to say thank you. Let's give another hand and keep serving for their honoring work. Particularly healing work. Let me do a shout out and say happy birthday to Efren Alonso.